They say the wind howled different the night you were born, not louder, just older, as if the canyon itself remembered something it couldn't quite name. No one wrote it down. There was no midwife, no town registry, just your mother bent with pain beneath a tarpaulin roof, her hands clenched into the dirt as your first cry echoed through the dusk. The tanner who found you said he only stayed because the firelight flickered 3 times. Superstition, maybe, or instinct. He never said which. You were swaddled in rags and silence. No name stitched into cloth, no mark carved into wood, nothing but breath. And for some, that wasn't enough. The midwives refused to record you, said a child born without a proper witness couldn't be trusted by the land. The preacher shook his head when the tanner came asking, said no baptism for ghosts, so the tanner stopped asking. He raised you in a roving cart, part leather shop, part library, part ghost house. He taught you how to dye hide, salt meat, read books, and avoid questions, especially the ones about names. When other children called out to each other, you stayed still, not shy, trained. You learned to walk without a sound, to read without reading aloud, to answer only to the rustle of paper or the creak of a horse bridle. He called you Mouse, said it was temporary, but it lasted, longer than his heartbeat, because when the fever took him one winter in a barn outside Bitterroot, no one knew who you were, not even you. You were 14, and the world had no line to point back toward. You burned his body alone, then packed the ledger. He'd kept one for every year, not for business, for memory. You slept with it under your blanket, the only book you'd never dared open until he was gone. Inside the front cover was a note, barely legible. If she must name herself, let it be with ink, not ash. You didn't know what it meant, not yet, but you carried it anyway, west, through rain, through silence, through the places where fences ran out and names became harder to hold. The first town that took you in didn't ask questions. The second tried to. You didn't answer. Eventually, even your shadow seemed to forget what to call you. Still, you worked. You stitched. You wrote ledger entries for shops you never owned, calculated debts you never owed, balanced other people's names with a precision you never applied to your own. One night in a dry town tavern, a woman whispered across the counter, "You got a name, girl?" You didn't look up, just said, "Not one that fits." She laughed. Not cruel, just tired. Then let the land name you. It's older than paperwork. You considered that for a while, years even, but the land stayed quiet until the night of the storm, the one that rolled in with a broken moon and copper air. You were camped near a ravine, ledger beneath your head, when the first lightning split the sky. You didn't wake from thunder. You woke from the silence after and found him there, the scout, standing just beyond the firelight. No coat, no horse, just stillness wrapped in buckskin and wind. He didn't speak, didn't move, didn't blink. You should have screamed. Instead, you reached slowly for the ledger, held it in your lap like a shield, and waited. The scout tilted his head, then turned and walked away. But in the morning there was something left behind, a single pressed wild flower, and a scrap of buckskin burned at the edge, written on it in careful hand, page 63, line 4. You opened the ledger, page 63, line 4, empty, but beneath it, under the grain of the page, something faint. A trace of ink, long dried, barely visible unless the firelight hit it right. 4 syllables, written in a language you didn't know, but you recognize one letter, the shape your hand had always drawn without knowing why. The one that felt like a sound caught in your ribs. That night, you wrote it again, on a blank page, then stared at it for hours. It didn't speak, but it stayed, and that was more than you ever had. So you whispered to the dark, to the scout, to the fire itself, "I will not vanish," then slept, ledger cradled in your arms. By 13, you could balance columns faster than most adults could speak. The tanner taught you by candlelight, not to track money, but to track meaning. How people leave shapes in ledgers, the quiet places between numbers, the names that disappear and reappear like smoke. You learned fast, because a name, even one written down wrong, was still a kind of claim. But yours was never entered, not once. He always said, "Better not to give the world a name, it can hurt." So you became fluent in silence. You listened to the way people hesitated before saying someone's full name, how the air changed around missing surnames, how one syllable could decide who ate and who was turned away from the post office counter. You watched and waited. Your name was never a question, it was a gap, a ledger left open waiting for ink that never came. After he died, you kept the ledgers anyway. There were 27 in all, some water-damaged, some unfinished, but all filled with one habit, a blank column for origin. Sometimes he drew a leaf, sometimes a knife. Once, beside your 6th birthday, he drew a single dot. No explanation, just a dot, and that dot lived in your bones like a second heart. Years passed. You worked odd jobs in small towns, laundry, in dust mill, bookkeeping in Grange. People never pressed hard if you did your work quietly and with clean hands. But in Dodge Hollow, something shifted. They didn't trust silence, didn't trust a woman who wrote without speaking, didn't trust a girl with no surname and perfect math. You stayed anyway, not for them, for the bookshop. The owner was deaf and kind. She didn't ask for names, only hours. You gave her plenty. In her back room, you kept a small bedroll and your bundle of ledgers wrapped in oilcloth. You read every one again, looking for your name like someone looking for a candle in an old church. You never found it. But one evening, in the margins of Ledger 12, you saw a strange annotation beside an entry dated during a Comanche raid. Girl survived. No mother. No mark. Carried a red cloth stitched with feathers. You ran your fingers over the note. It wasn't his handwriting. It was older, more careful. And on the back cover, tucked behind the binding, you found something new. A folded slip of rawhide. On it, pressed faintly in black pigment, "If she lives, she will page herself in." You stared at it for hours. Then wrote on the inside flap, "Still alive." You didn't know why, but it felt right. That night, a wind came in strong. You heard it rattle the shutters of the shop, heard the rain kick dust from the window ledge, heard something knock once on the back door. You didn't move, didn't breathe. But in the morning, there it was, tucked under the doorstep. A loose sheet, ledger paper, but not yours. On it, a line drawn across the top, then a single phrase, "Where ink ends, she begins." You turned it over, nothing else. No name, no sender, but the paper smelled of cedar smoke and sage, like him, like the scout, the one who never spoke, the one who stood still as history. You folded the page, placed it inside your own ledger, and whispered, for the first time since childhood, "If I can't be named, I will name myself." It echoed in the shop like a new hymn, and something in your chest loosened, not healed, but unhidden. You didn't tell the shopkeeper, you didn't tell the sheriff. You just started a new page, not for others, for you. It began. Page 1. The woman who lived through silence. Then you drew a dot beneath it. Not small, centered, dark, because some things don't need names to hold weight. They just need to be written. You never feared fire until it chose your name to swallow. It was early autumn in Dodge Hollow, the wind sharp, the trees thinning like stories told too often. You had just returned from the post, carrying 2 wrapped packages of ink and a new brush pen. You still remember the way the air smelled, like dried apples and old ash. By the time you reached the shop, the flames had already found the back wall. A single beam caught slow and mean, chewing its way toward the ledgers you kept wrapped in oilcloth behind the shelf. You didn't scream, you ran, into smoke, into heat, into memory. The townsfolk shouted behind you. The shopkeeper tried to stop you, her hands flailing, her mouth wide, soundless, but you didn't stop. Not until you had the bundle in your arms and the door behind you collapsed in flame. The last thing you remember was a hard crack against your shoulder and the smell of scorched leather. When you woke, you were in the schoolhouse infirmary, your fingers blistered, your ear burned, but your arm still cradled the ledgers like a mother clinging to the only thing she has left. They let you keep them, out of respect maybe, or guilt. Only one was lost, the one you never opened, the one wrapped in red cloth, stitched with a pattern you never recognized, feathers and circles and something that looked like the outline of a woman's eye. You'd always meant to open it last. He had wrapped it tight, knotted it twice. Now, only ash. When the townsfolk asked your name, you said nothing, not out of spite, but because you realized then, if fire could take your only claim, maybe your name wasn't meant to survive. And yet, that night, in the quiet of the back room, what was left of it, you unwrapped the surviving bundle. Every ledger, smoke-scarred, but intact, except one. The inside cover had blistered, and beneath the bubbling parchment a name had half bled through, not in English, and not whole. But you traced it anyway, carefully, as if touching the edges of a ghost, a name with no vowels, no spaces, just shape, and sound. If you let your breath follow it, you copied it onto a slip of dry paper, then folded it, pressed it between your palms, and whispered, "If you're mine, you'll stay." In the morning, it was still there, unburned, unfaded, still waiting. That same day, a boy from the edge of town came to return a book. He carried a piece of charred wood in his hand. "I found this out back," he said. "Didn't know if it mattered." It was the end piece of your shelf, and on it, barely legible, was the shape you'd traced. The symbol again, carved, long ago. You thanked him, closed the door, held the wood like a promise, and knew the fire hadn't stolen your name. It had revealed the shape of what you already were, not unnamed, unwritten. You took the new brush pen, opened to a fresh page, and wrote, "I am not what they burned." Then beside it, you drew the shape, again, this time darker, deeper, centered. Later, as dusk fell, you stepped outside. The scout stood at the edge of the street, still, quiet, watching the smoke curl from the ruins. You raised the page, didn't speak, but held it high. He nodded once, then turned away. That night, under starlight, you began to understand something true. You were never cursed for lacking a name. You were feared for one that couldn't be erased. The scout returns 3 days later, not with thunder, not with fire, just stillness. You feel him before you see him. The horses stir. The wind dies. The ledger page you'd left open flips on its own. You step outside, and there he is, at the edge of the shop's burned frame, where the porch used to be, where the ash still remembers heat. He doesn't speak, but his presence carries weight, like a sentence that's already been written, waiting only for you to read it aloud. He wears the same deerskin coat, worn at the cuffs, marked with stitched lines, horizontal, vertical, and one spiral over his heart. You wonder what it means. He gestures once, not to you, to the open ledger in your hand, then to the scorched end of the wood shelf you kept, the one with the faint carved symbol. You nod. He steps forward, no weapon, no warning, and kneels beside the cinders. He pulls a small pouch from his side, unties it. Inside ashes, he sifts them into the burned ground. With his bare hand, he traces your symbol into the new soot. Slowly, once, then again, then presses his palm into the center of it. When he lifts his hand, the shape lingers, like a breath held in the dirt. Then he does something you don't expect. He pulls a small square of rawhide from his satchel, folded in 4. He offers it to you. You don't take it right away. Instead, you look at him. Really look. His eyes are not unkind. They are full of waiting. Not the waiting of someone who doubts, the waiting of someone who's already heard the answer, but needs you to say it aloud. So you take the rawhide, unfold it. On the inside, inked lines, not letters, not English, ledger marks, tallies, spacing, and one line broken midway, as if a name was started and never finished. Beneath it, a mark, your mark, drawn as if from memory. You look up. He nods once, then touches his chest, the spiral, then the rawhide, then points at you. And that's when you know. He didn't come to name you. He came to confirm what you'd already begun to write. The ledger of your life had been torn from someone else's story, and now it waited, not for permission, but for completion. You say quietly, "You knew my mother." His brow doesn't change, but his hand lowers. Slowly. Then he reaches into the pouch again, this time pulling a woven string, red, yellow, and black. Threaded with a single bead in the center, he places it on the rawhide between the tallies and the broken name. Then stands, still no words, but everything inside you knows what's been said. He leaves without turning, as if the land itself pulls him away. You hold the rawhide and string in your lap until the stars come out. Then you go inside, lay the string across the burned shelf piece. Open your ledger and begin a new section. Name not given, found. Source broken, repaired. Ledger interrupted, reclaimed. You add the mark again, this time bolder. Then draw the spiral beside it, not because you understand, because you will. Later that night you dream of a woman with your hands. She speaks no words, only gestures. She signs the shape of your symbol into a dark sky, then vanishes. But the sky does not. It stays, open, like a blank page, like a question finally given space to be answered. You wake with the rawhide still in your hands and a whisper in your breath. I will page myself in. Dodge Hollow was not built for mystery. It was built for record books and fences, for stamped documents and signatures in triplicate, for last names that matched land deeds. So when you return to the town square, ledger in hand, ash still clinging to your hem, people notice. They always noticed. But now they talk. "She's the girl with no name," someone says near the grain store. "Came from nowhere, left with fire," murmurs another by the well. You don't answer them. You walk to the mercantile, to the postmaster's table. You have come to place an order for paper, ink, a small ledger of your own. But the man behind the desk looks up, chews his lip, and says, "Full name?" You pause, then slide the order form forward without answering. He taps it with a stubby finger. No order without a name. You reach into your satchel and pull the rawhide square, place it on the desk. He stares. "Can't read that." You answer, calm. "It reads enough." He squints, sniffs. "You trying to bring curses on the town, girl?" You say nothing. Just fold the rawhide, place it back in your bag, and walk away. Later that week, at the town meeting, your name comes up again. They don't use the word witch, but they skirt its edges. Some say you've been hiding. Some say you're not who you claim to be. One man says you claimed nothing at all, and that's the problem. You watch from the shadows near the hall's back wall. No one sees you. They argue about whether to ban you from the school, the post, the store. Then the teacher stands. She's not loud, but her voice is shaped like stone smoothed by water. She says, "She's the only one who helped my students write their names when their own parents couldn't." Silence. Then a slow murmur, then a vote. It doesn't go your way. The next morning, a small notice is nailed outside the general store. Unregistered residents may not conduct business within town limits. They mean you. You don't tear it down. You don't argue. You return to the ledger and write, "Some names break doors open. Others make folks build new ones just to keep them out." That evening, someone throws a stone through the bookshop window. The shopkeeper finds you sweeping up shards, barefoot and quiet. She takes your hand, traces a cut along your palm, then signs, "I trust stories, not signatures." You nod, then pull the rawhide square from your pocket. Show her. She places her hand over it, then places yours over hers. You hold it there, in silence. In shared firelight, two people who were never given the names they deserved, but still found language in touch. You leave the broken glass where it lies, like stars, like memory, like proof. In the following days, you stop trying to explain. You stop trying to fit. Instead, you write. You begin a new section in your ledger called Witnesses. Each time someone acknowledges you, a nod, a touch, a spoken thank you, you log it. Not their names, their acts, because that's what names were meant to be anyway. Proof of impact, proof of trace. You're up to 17 entries when the scout appears again, this time at sunset, on the ridge above town. He holds no message, only a book, bound in sinew, blank pages inside. He sets it at your feet. You look up. He signs a single motion, "Write louder," then vanishes into the canyon's hush. You carry the book home and begin. Not with your name, with theirs. You don't remember learning the Comanche lullaby. But when the tune comes out of your mouth, slow, breath-bound, barely above whisper, it feels older than your teeth. You hum it one night beside the fire. Your fingers trail over the stitched edges of the rawhide, the broken name inked in half-faded script. Then you hum it again and again. And by the third time, you realize you're not alone. To your left, just beyond the tree line, the scout stands. No lantern, no horse, only presence. He doesn't move, but he listens. You don't stop humming. The melody unspools from your chest like thread from a wound, soft, deep, unfinished. When the final note fades, the scout steps forward, kneels beside the fire. He pulls from his satchel a bundle of folded pages, aged, lined, speckled with soot. He hands you the top sheet. You unfold it carefully. It's ledger paper, but not like yours. This one bears a single line, inked in bold strokes. Name, Tsaató, echo of flame. Beneath it, a birth date, 2 decades ago. The timing fits. The place matches a rihat you'd once heard whispered about in Dust Mill. A Comanche band, ambushed in their own camp, children taken, records destroyed. You stare at the name, feel it inside your teeth. It bitus, not in a way English names fit. It wraps around you. The scout watches. You ask softly, "Was that her name?" He nods, then presses 2 fingers to the spiral stitched over his heart. Your breath catches. The lullaby was hers. The name was hers, and you were the echo, not a curse, a continuation. He reaches into his bag once more, pulls out a narrow comb, carved bone, delicate, worn smooth by years. On one side, your mark. On the other, the first half of your name, incomplete, like the pages, like the lullaby. You take it with reverence. It hums in your palm, Damo. Assad, not with sound, but with memory. You know now why the shop burned, not for malice, for misalignment. It held something sacred in a space that hadn't been prepared to carry it. But you are prepared now. You press the comb to the ledger page, trace its lines. Then with new ink you write, Tsaató, echo of flame. Not her daughter, her return. The scout smiles. A flicker only, but real. You ask, what happens next? He signs 2 gestures, one for wind, one for voice, then points to your chest. You don't fully understand, but you know what to do. You carry the name into town the next day. Write it plainly across your order form. Tsaató. The postmaster reads it, pauses, says nothing, but he fills your request. 3 bundles of ledger paper, a bottle of ink, a fine brush. You say thank you. And he says, first time your handwriting felt like it had weight. You nod. Because he's right. Names aren't just for saying, they're for carrying. Later, at the schoolhouse, the teacher asks you to stay. Says the children have started humming that tune, the one you didn't know you knew. They ask what it means. You kneel beside them. Trace the name in the dust. Tsaató. One boy whispers, how do you spell it? You say, you don't, you feel it. That night, you write in your new ledger, a name is not a chain. It's the sound your story makes when whispered through fire. You place the comb between its pages and sleep for the first time with your head on your own name. You've never entered the canyon cave before, but the scout gestures for you to follow. So you do. No questions, no torch, just trust. The trail narrows fast, the air cools, the ground grows soft with pine needle and dust. At the entrance, a cedar branch marks the threshold. 2 knots tied with sinew and a strip of red cloth fluttering like a heartbeat. He holds it aside for you. You duck beneath. Inside silence, not empty, intentional. A hush wrapped in story. He walks ahead, deeper into the shadows. You trail your fingers along the wall behind he. Saw faint markings, scorched lines, worn indentations, ledgers maybe, old ones. No paper, just memory carved into stone. You reach a chamber where the ceiling dips and the light thins. There, arranged in a crescent, sit 5 bundles, each wrapped in cloth, each bound with a comb. You know, even before he points, that one is hers, your mother's. He kneels, unfolds the cloth from the middle bundle. Inside, not paper, not bone, textiles, quilt squares, each stitched with a different name. Not in English, not in Comanche, symbols, glyphs, the kind you've drawn without knowing why since childhood. One square is unfinished, only the outer edge sewn. You touch it, and the thread hums. He places your comb beside it. The match is perfect. Your hands begin to shake. He doesn't move, only watches. You whisper, "She was recording us." He nods, then traces a single line from the quilt square to the rock wall. It connects. You kneel, and with trembling fingers pull from your satchel the ledger. You open to a blank page, and for the first time your hand doesn't hesitate. You draw the square, then the glyph, then the comb, then your name, Tsaató. When you finish, he takes the bone comb and presses it into your palm, then reaches into his coat, pulls out a single item, a key, old, worn, tied to a ribbon dyed with ash. He places it beside the quilt. You look at him and finally ask, "Was she kept somewhere?" He looks away, then nods, slow, as if the story still hurts to hold. You don't press. Instead, you reach out, not for answers, for presence, and place your hand over his. For a moment, neither of you speaks. Then he whispers, his voice like gravel smoothed by wind, "You're not a return. You're the ledger she never got to finish." It takes you hours to copy every symbol, every thread, every square. When you finish, your back aches, your eyes blur, but the page is full. You stand. He folds the quilt back, slow, as if tucking in something sacred, as if it breathes. And you both step out of the cave, not into daylight, but into dawn, a sky the color of ledger paper, waiting to be marked. The summons comes in the form of a knock, too polite to be urgent, too early to be casual. You open the door to find 2 men. One holds a folded paper, the other a pistol holstered too high. The taller one speaks first. "Town Council requests your presence. Noon, Assembly Hall." No explanation, no smile. You nod. Close the door. Behind you, the ledger lies open to the quilt page, the ink still drying. You trace your comb once, then fold the ledger shut. You've seen enough trials to know how these go. They don't ask for you to speak. They ask for your silence to betray you. Still, you dress plainly. Wrap the rawhide in your shawl. Tuck the comb inside your boot. Carry only one thing in your hand, a blank ledger. At the hall, they seat you alone, on a wooden chair meant for school children. The crowd behind you murmurs, a sea of eyes that have always watched you with more curiosity than care. The council sits at a raised bench. 5 men, 1 woman, all white, all tired. The eldest clears his throat. There have been questions, concerns about your identity, your origin, your name. You meet his gaze. "Say nothing," he continues. "We ask you for the record to state your full name." You reach for the ledger, open to a fresh page. Write, slow and clear, "Tsaató." You hold it up. A few people whisper. One scoffs. Another mutters, "Not legal." The councilwoman leans forward. "What language is that?" You answer, "The one my mother left behind." Someone in the back coughs. Another, "That ain't proof of anything." You turn to the next page. draw the quilt square, then the symbol, then the comb. You say, "This is what was taken from her. This is what I'm returning." The elder frowns. "We need written evidence, birth certificate, affidavit, a baptism, something." You pause, then pull from your satchel the rawhide square. Hold it up. Inked glyph, broken ledger line, the mark. You speak softly. "This is all she had, and it was enough to raise me." They don't answer. The silence feels like judgment, until the door at the back creaks open, and someone steps through. A woman, older, skin like bark, braids, streaked silver. She walks without hesitation, carries a book in her arms. A ledger, older than yours. She moves to the front, past gasps and narrowed eyes, places the ledger on the council table, opens to the middle, speaks with steady breath. "This name appeared once in my father's records. The night of the raid, one infant taken, no name, only this mark." She points to the same glyph you just drew, then steps back. The council shuffles papers, glances at one another. Finally, the eldest says, "We'll reconvene after deliberation." You rise. Walk out, ledger in hand. You don't wait for their decision. You already made yours. Later, by the river, the woman finds you, hands you a folded page from her father's ledger. "You were never off the record," she says. "You were just misfiled." You thank her. She says nothing more, but presses the page into your palm and walks away. You open it. At the bottom, barely legible, "Infant, cried until found, marked cloth, no name, but name enough." You place the page inside your ledger, under Tsaató, then sit beside the river until dusk, letting your name echo between water and wind. That night, the town's sky turns the color of burned parchment, not from fire, from storm, the kind that carries no thunder, only pressure, the kind you feel behind your teeth. You sit by the window of what remains of the shop, candlelight flickering low. Your ledger lies open, the comb resting in its fold, the rawhide beside it. Then, soft as breath, comes a sound you've waited weeks to hear. A baby's cry. Not loud, not frantic, just real. Alive. You rise before you think. Step outside. Across the square, the school teacher stands at her porch, swaddled infant in arms. She rocks gently, barefoot against the planks. You approach slowly. She doesn't flinch, just smiles. "He couldn't sleep unless I hummed that tune," she says. "Yours." You glance down. The baby looks at you, eyes wide. No fear, no hesitation. She leans in. "He doesn't have a middle name yet. Thought you might give one." You freeze. It's the first time someone's asked you to name anything besides yourself. You think of the canyon, the stitched quilt, the unfinished ledger line, the sound of ash turning to breath. You whisper, "Sava." She blinks. "What does it mean?" You smile. "Nothing. And everything. It's the space between." She nods. No questions, just faith. You press your palm lightly to the baby's forehead. He coos. You close your eyes. Breathe deep. Later, back in your quarters, you write, "Naming is not ownership. It's trust passed forward. I was named by fire, but I will name with quiet. The storm passes before dawn, but the scent of wet cedar lingers well into the morning. When you return to the burned shop, you find something new. A note, nailed gently to the door frame. No name, just a mark, your glyph. And beneath it, in pencil, Council recognizes Tsaató as resident. You smile. Not because you needed their approval, but because ink, once seen, cannot be unseen. You enter the shop, step over the charred beam, and kneel beside the ledger. You begin a new page. Witness number 27. Then write. Sometimes a town can unlearn its forgetting. Later that week, the scout visits again, not at night, in daylight. He enters the shop, silent. But his presence hums like the last page of a book left open too long. He hands you a parcel wrapped in hide. Inside, 2 ledgers, not blank, not yours. One holds her writing, your mother's, the other his. Pages of careful entries, sketches, glyphs, song lines. You don't ask how he got them, you just press them to your chest, then say, "I'm not the end of this." He nods, then, for the first time, speaks aloud. 3 words, low, gravel-worn, but clear. You're the ledger. Then he leaves, and you finally cry. Not from loss, from weight lifted, from truth spoken, from becoming the page they couldn't burn. You spend the next few weeks not speaking much, not because there's nothing to say, but because words now feel sacred. Every morning you unlace the rawhide bundle, open her ledger, trace the curves of her handwriting. It's different from yours. Wider strokes, more rounded loops, like someone who believed ink should move like breath, not blade. She wrote in 2 languages, side by side, Comanche glyphs on the left, English translations on the right, except for 1 page. But because words now feel sacred, where the translation space is left blank, only a single glyph, repeated, centered. You recognize it instantly, your symbol, no caption, just that mark, over and over. Like she'd run out of ways to say your name, or maybe she knew no translation could hold it. You place your hand on the page, it warms beneath your skin. You write nothing that day. Instead, you walk the ridge near the canyon's mouth. The sky is low, crows circle lazy and confident. You sit beside a rock worn smooth by years of wind and open your ledger. This time, you don't draw. You just listen, to wind, to stone, to her. The quilt flashes in your mind, unfinished, waiting. You decide to stitch, not the fabric, your version. With ink, you spend days recreating every symbol she used. Each square becomes a chapter, each glyph a memory. You invent the ones that are missing, not to replace, to continue. A woman in town notices, asks if you're making some kind of family tree. You pause, then answer, "No, I'm making a family that remembers." She nods like she understands, and maybe she does. She brings you thread later that week, dyed in earth tones, ochre, clay, moss. You ink her name into your ledger, witness number 34. That night, by firelight, you hum the lullaby again. It's easier now, not just a tune, a rhythm you know by heart. You imagine her singing it bent over cloth, hands busy, voice soft. The ledger beside her, your name in glyphs, repeating like prayer. You write, "She didn't name me to define me. She named me to continue herself." Then, in the margin, page after page after page. The next day a child knocks on your door. You open it. She says nothing, just hands you a slip of paper, a drawing, a version of your glyph, crooked, bright, rimmed in green. You smile, ask, "Is this yours?" She nods, then points to the sky, mouths, "It's up there too." You follow her finger, see clouds parting into light. The shape is not perfect, but it holds the curve. You kneel, ask her name. She whispers it like a secret. You write it down, then give her your comb. She gasps. But this is yours. You smile. Now it's yours too. She runs off. Comb in hand, hair wild. You log her in the ledger, witness number 35. Beside it, you draw her version of the glyph, less precise, more alive. You add a note. Let the next page be less perfect, but more human. You close the ledger, not from ending, from fullness. A page can only hold so much, but you're no longer only the page. You're the writer now, the ink, the edge of flame that left stories where smoke once lived. By early spring, the ledger has outgrown itself. The spine splinters, corners warp, ink bleeds through. You don't stop, you just begin a second. Then a third. You sew the old and new together with thread gifted by neighbors. Red from the teacher, yellow from the shopkeeper, a pale gray from the councilwoman who once voted against you. She left it in silence, wrapped in paper, no note, just a single drawn glyph on the wrapping, yours, careful and clean. You stitched her name beside the gray thread, witness 41. In time, others follow. They don't call you Tsaató out loud, not always, but they greet you softer. They walk slower when you pass. The blacksmith, who once wouldn't take your coin, now leaves a wrapped comb at your door, carved from walnut, etched with a spiral. You place it beside the original. Your comb collection grows, but you keep only one with you at all times, the original, bone white, the one your mother left behind. You carry it not for protection, for grounding. A reminder, no matter how many pages you write, you came from one blank space. You write that line in the new ledger. Origin is not proof, it's presence. On the first day of planting season, the teacher brings you a child, a boy with wide eyes and no voice. She says he won't speak, not since his mother died. You kneel, draw a line in the dirt, then your glyph, then hand him the brush. He stares, then, slowly, draws a different shape beside it, a swirl with sharp edges. You nod. Yours? He nods back. You ink it into your ledger. Give him his own page. Witness number 44. You write beside it. Even silence carries a name. He returns the next day and the next. Eventually, others come too. Children first, then their parents, then those who once doubted, now unsure. They don't ask for lessons. They ask for space. You give it freely. Ledger pages, ink, time. One woman asks if it's a school. You shake your head. No desks, no grades, just remembering. She signs her name into the dust. You record her too. The pages fill faster now. Stories cross. Names change. Some return to old ones. Some make new. You never correct. You just bear witness. You write in the margin, a name is not a destination. It's a direction you keep choosing. Then one morning, the scout returns. But this time he brings someone with him, a child, 7, maybe 8. Eyes sharp, posture wary. She holds a bundle, wrapped tight in tanned cloth. She doesn't speak, but she walks straight to your desk and places it down. You unwrap it. Inside, a fragment of leather, painted, cracked. Familiar? It's a piece of your mother's quilt, torn long ago. You meet the girl's eyes, ask nothing. She nods once. You nod back. No names exchanged, not yet. But you write a new entry, witness number 52. Then whisper, welcome home. You trace the fragment's edge with reverence, then sew it into the corner of your ledger's cover. Some stories need to be held, not told. Some names, spoken only in silence. You write, a fragment still carries the whole. That night, you dream of a book with no spine, no end, and pages that curl like leaves, each filled not with words, but with breath. You wake knowing you are no longer the ledger, you are the ink passed forward. The first time they ask you to speak publicly, you almost say no. It's a town gathering, not a trial this time, but something softer, a commemoration. They've built a small structure by the river. Nothing fancy, just a wooden post, a carved bench, a plaque space left intentionally blank. The teacher says, "We thought maybe if you had words for it." You don't answer right away. Instead, you walk there alone the night before. The moon is low. The bench still smells of fresh pine. You run your fingers over the blank plaque and understand this isn't a monument. It's a placeholder, like you were once. So you sit, ledger, in lap, and begin to write. Not an origin story, not a record, a letter to whoever finds this place next. You write. You may not know your name when you arrive here. That's all right. Some names are earned later. Some only bloom after fire. If you carry silence, it doesn't mean you're empty. It means you're listening. And maybe that's the oldest kind of name there is, one that echoes without needing to shout. You don't sign it. You just draw the mark, the glyph, and beneath it, the new one the boy made, yours, now intertwined. You return home. The next morning the scout arrives with the child again. She carries something wrapped in cloth. You unfold it. Inside, a piece of the original ledger your mother kept, burned around the edges, but legible. One line. Ink faded but intact. If ever found, let her name herself. You place the fragment in your palm, then tuck it into the final page of your own ledger. Right beneath it, she did. That afternoon you return to the river. The townsfolk are gathered, some faces still tight with old habit, others open, curious. You step forward, place your hand over the plaque, then speak, not loud, not rehearsed, just true. I was not named by a priest or a lawman. I was named by what survived, by a fire that couldn't erase a glyph, by a child's drawing in dust, by a comb passed from hand to hand. You look out at them, then add, and now, by all of you. You lift your ledger, open to the witness page, 57 names, 57 stories. You say, this is not a history book. It's a quilt, and I'm not the author. I'm just the thread that remembered to keep sewing. They're quiet, not from discomfort, from reverence. And then, one by one, they approach, not with speeches, with objects, a button, a carved spoon, a feather. Each person places something beneath the plaque, unlabeled, unclaimed, but part of it now. You don't cry, not then. You wait until nightfall, when the bench is empty again, and the moonlight touches the edge of the plaque like a hand. You whisper the lullaby, only once. Then leave a comb of your own, the original, nestled in the wood's corner, not as surrender, as offering, to whatever girl comes next, to whoever forgets her name and dares to reclaim it anyway. Spring slips into early summer like ink into paper, slowly, everywhere. You move into the old stone building by the river once used to store grains, now empty, save for one shelf and one promise. You fill both, the shelf with ledgers, the promise with presents. People start calling it the Page House. You don't correct them. Children come first, curious. Mud on their knees, dust in their hair. They ask you what a ledger is. You say, a place that remembers. They ask if they can make one. You say, you already are one. They blink, then smile. One girl brings her grandmother's shawl, faded plaid, edge unraveling, and asks if it's allowed in the ledger. You say, only if it carries a story. She says, she wrapped me in it the day she died. You stitch a swatch of it to page 51. Beneath it, you draw the girl's handprint. Then write, we are not born blank. We are born with the warmth of others still holding us. Later that week, a man arrives, not from town, not from anywhere nearby. He carries no satchel, no horse, only a box. He doesn't speak at first, just opens it. Inside, dozens of combs, bone, wood, iron, painted, plain. He says, these were gathered after the raids, left behind, lost. I kept them. You meet his eyes and whisper, so they wouldn't be forgotten. He nods, then places the box on your table. You catalog each one, draw them, describe them, assign them pages, not to claim them, to return them. Some folks come to Page House after, recognize a shape, a carving. Not always, but enough. You write, objects survive for a reason, they hold what words fumble. The man doesn't stay, but before he leaves, he hands you a folded paper. A name, not his, but hers. Someone he once failed to protect. You copy it into the ledger, then burn the paper, ash to ink, grief to legacy. The girl from the river, the one with your comb, returns that night. She sits beside the fire, doesn't speak for a long time. Then, soft as breath, she says, I don't think I need the comb anymore. You nod and reach for your ledger, but she stops you, says, I'll write this one. You hand her the brush. She draws your glyph, then adds a curl, a leaf maybe, or flame. You don't correct. She names herself. You write in the margin, a child returned my name by choosing her own. Later, when the scout visits, you tell him, the ledger's not just mine anymore. He nods, then signs a single motion. It never was. Before leaving, he places something beside your bedroll, a length of cloth, quilted, but newer. Squares from town, the teacher's fabric, the shopkeeper's apron, the councilwoman's ribbon, a corner of your own shawl. He's been collecting them all along, stitching quietly. You add it to the ledger, folded, waiting. You write, some stories aren't sewn in straight lines, but they hold together just the same. Then, by firelight, you hum the lullaby one more time, and somewhere outside a bird picks up the tune, not perfectly, but enough. By late summer, the Page House breathes like a living thing. Windows open to catch breeze, pages rustle in rhythm. Sunlight cuts across wood floors like a ribbon of gold-threaded cotton. You rise early now, not from duty, from invitation. Each morning a new object waits on your doorstep, a token, a whisper, a piece of someone's memory hoping to become part of something larger. You don't ask who leaves them, you just record. Today, a pine cone painted red. Next to it, a child's note, from where we first hid during the flood. You write, a pine cone knows how to close tight and still open again. Each evening, a lantern is lit in the window. It signals that the Page House is open, not for business, for belonging. People come. They don't always speak. Sometimes they just sit, brush fingers over stitched pages, and breathe. That's enough. One evening, the woman who once gave you gray thread visits again. She brings her daughter. You've seen the child before, a watcher, always at the edge. Today she steps closer and says, "I've been dreaming of a symbol. I don't know what it means." You hand her the brush, no hesitation. She draws something half-formed, a shape like a river curling back toward itself. You say, "Maybe it means it's time to return to where you started." She nods, almost tearful. You ink it into the ledger, witness number 72. Later, you ask the woman if she wants her own page. She shakes her head. "I had my chance. I squandered it." You answer gently, "There's no such thing as a last page, only pages we haven't turned yet." She leaves behind a folded apron, worn thin but clean. You sew a corner of it onto a blank square in the quilt. You write, "Remorse can still be part of the patchwork. Thread is thread." The child waves, "Goodbye." You notice her symbol glowing faintly in the last light of dusk. The river's curve, mirrored in the page house's very foundation. That night, you open your mother's original ledger. Only 2 pages remain untouched. You stare at them, not out of fear, out of wonder. How many names, how many combs, how many songs have passed between these pages? You write, every blank page is a question asking, who's next? Then gently close the book, not as ending, as pause. You place it on the highest shelf, within reach, but no longer your only source. Now children arrive with ledgers of their own, tied with string, filled with clumsy symbols. They ask if there's a real. You always say yes, because they are. One child writes only in blue ink, says it's sky language. Another insists on drawing everything upside down, claims it makes the stories stick better. You let them. You write, "The stories that last are the ones not afraid to tilt." Then one night the scout doesn't come alone. He brings an elder, face carved by time, eyes sharp with remembering. She speaks little, but she touches every ledger, then leaves a bundle of thread in your hand. Colors you've never seen, sky before lightning, soil after rain. You look at her. She says, "From the quilt she started. Now yours to finish." You don't cry, not yet, but you thread the first needle and begin to sew, not for heritage, for continuity. The last quilt square takes you 3 days to stitch. You don't rush. You work slowly, one thread at a time, breath sinking with each pull. The square holds no glyph, no comb, no witness name, just a line, curved, open-ended, like a question never meant to be answered, only held. When you finish, you don't sign it. You wrap the quilt gently and walk it down to the river. The light is soft, late summer gold laced with the scent of pine and warmth. You sit on the bench, now worn smooth by dozens of visitors. You spread the quilt across your lap. Every stitch speaks. Names born and reborn, objects carried and surrendered, losses made visible, songs passed quietly from one hand to the next. You think of the comb left behind, still nestled in the wood of this bench, faintly catching light, still waiting for someone else. You hum the lullaby, softer than ever. This time it feels complete. A circle closed. You write one final entry in your mother's ledger, the page once blank. Your glyph woven now with the girl's curl, the boy's swirl, the scout's silent arc. You add a line beneath. This is not where it ends. It's only where the next ledger begins. The wind stirs. Somewhere behind you, A bell rings. The soft chime tied to Page House's front door. You don't move. You let someone else answer. Because they will. You've taught them how. You close your eyes, let the air carry you. Let the memories flicker like firelight inside your chest. The town no longer needs you to prove anything. You've given them the tools, the ink, the pause. And they've given you something greater, the quiet assurance that your name, once vanished, now lingers in others, not carved in stone, but passed in gesture, in cloth, in song. You rise slowly, fold the quilt, cradle it like breath. You walk the edge of the river one last time. And as the sun dips, casting everything in soft hush, you place the quilt on the porch of Page House. Not as a relic, as an invitation. Whoever finds it next will add their square, stitch their pain, their joy, their name. And one day, maybe, leave it out again for someone else. You walk away without looking back, because stories don't live where we leave them. They live in how we let them go. And in the dark, just before full night, a voice, young, unsure, begins to hum. Not your melody, theirs, but the thread is there, and that's enough.